Welcome to this episode of our program, Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an important Arab file. Today we'll be speaking about Egypt's assuming the presidency of the Peace and Security Council at the African Union, or the African Union Peace and Security Council, in November. The African Union has already announced that Egypt will be holding the presidency of the Council in light of its effective role in supporting and strengthening the peace and security in the African continent. Egypt has definitely been exerting its utmost efforts in order to combat extremism and terrorism during the presidency of the Council and during its presidency to the African Union, and throughout the whole past period since Egypt is one of the founding members of the African Union. We'll be speaking about Egypt's assuming the presidency of the Council this month. We'll be speaking about the role of Egypt in Africa at large. We'll be speaking about all that in our episode today. Before we dive into our discussion, let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry met the United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process to review the latest developments in Palestine and efforts to push forward long-stalled peace talks between the Palestinians and Israelis. Shoukry stressed the significance of reaching a suitable climate to resume peace negotiations between the Palestinian and Israeli sides. American Vice President Kamala Harris plans to support Libya taking steps towards election at a conference in Paris next week. The Libya-focused summit organized with the United Nations, Germany and Italy in Paris for November 12th is expected to gather some 20 regional and international heads of state. Wrangling over elections planned for December 24th has threatened to derail Libya's efforts to end a decade of chaos and violence. A wider peace push has put a transitional unity government into office until that vote. The International Monetary Fund has begun preparatory talks with Lebanon for a new aid package after receiving an official request from Beirut. That will be a welcome relief to the new government that is trying to stem an economic crisis that the World Bank brands as one of the worst since the mid-19th century and which has caused Lebanon's currency to collapse. An IMF spokesman said that the body has received a letter from Prime Minister Najib Mikati of Lebanon expressing the authorities' interest in a funding program. The Saudi-led military coalition in Yemen said on Thursday that it has killed 115 Houthi rebels in 24 hours in air raids near Ma'rib city, the final northern stronghold of pro-government forces. In a statement, the coalition said that the rebels had been killed in raids in the Sirwah district west of Ma'rib and Al-Jawf province north of it, adding that 14 military vehicles had been destroyed. The coalition has reported near-daily strikes over the past 3 weeks that have now resulted in some 2,600 deaths among the rebels. Sudanese army chief ordered the release of 4 civilian ministers detained since last month as international pressure mounted to restore the democratic transition. The move by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan came as the army said that the formation of a new government was imminent. Al-Burhan's media advisor said that he was considering all internal and external initiatives to serve the national interest of Sudan. Al-Burhan's decision to release the ministers came shortly after a telephone call between Al-Burhan and United Nations head Antonio Guterres, who personally appealed to the military chief to restore the democratic transition.
Right, welcome back. And to highlight the issue of Egypt assuming the presidency of the African Union Peace and Security Council, we have with us over the phone Dr. Raouf Ghafar, political analyst. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you, my dear.
Speaking about this post which Egypt is holding for this month, and we're speaking here about a number of challenges that Egypt is facing in the African continent, particularly Libya, Sudan, Somalia, and definitely other challenges, including managing terrorism, including many others. How do you read those challenges? How do you read how Egypt has been exerting its utmost effort even before assuming the presidency of this council in such conflicts?
Let me tell you something. I mean, Egypt has a responsibility towards Africa. And whether or not it is presiding this council or the other, it will never fail to abide to these responsibilities. So this is something, I mean, we have to admit. Egypt is the, if not the, but one of 2 or 3 largest countries in the continent, definitely one of the most important ones that plays a regional and international role ever since it was created 7,000 years ago. So, I mean, it's good that we be on top of such council, but once again, I repeat, we are assuming our responsibilities whether we are on top or not. So this I want just to emphasize before going into details. Egypt, since the comeback to Africa by our leadership and etc., we have been there for our African countrymen or colleagues anywhere and everywhere they want. Talking security and peace, definitely Egypt has played a major role, if not the most important role, in establishing peace and security in most of the conflict areas and hot areas, not only in the neighboring countries. You have mentioned Libya, for instance. I think Egypt had the most important role in establishing security and peace in Libya, and thanks to the efforts of our president that we have reached now this route map, which hopefully will result in elections very, very soon. Talking Sudan and South Sudan, same area. South Sudan, same area. Same thing, I'm sorry. If we're talking the African Horn, again, we were there. Even though Egypt has been the most participating country in the UN peacekeeping forces. So, I mean, that we care for our colleagues in Africa, we care for their peace and security, and we, I repeat myself, we will always be there for them anywhere and everywhere they want us to have a peaceful and secured continent. So this is not new to Egypt, and maybe on the administrative side, being the president of such council will maybe give us some legal, I don't know, capacities or something. But again, we will still be playing our role, whether we are or we are not on top of this council.
Right. Dr. Raouf, we're speaking here about the council, or this Peace and Security Council, which is an organ of the African Union. It has the capacity of the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts, and follow the model of the UN Security Council. And we're speaking here about part of its mission is to finding lasting solutions for armed conflicts, for terrorism, for illegal migrancy, for or immigration, repercussions of the climate change, and the continental peace and security at large. If we speak about one file to the other in this or this big agenda. Yes. So, speaking about ending the armed conflicts and the initiatives that Egypt has put, including the silence of gun, how far has Egypt worked on finding permanent solutions to the armed conflicts in the continent, particularly that we are having here a kind of a northern Arab African country and a southern African countries. So how do you view how Egypt worked on that?
First of all, we have managed to fight terrorism on Egyptian soil, thank God, and we have made very big successes. Then we have managed to fight it in our neighboring countries. I'm talking to the west, in Libya. We have had a major role in stabilizing, I should say, the militias and the terrorists that exist there, whether in the west or in the south. So our efforts against the terrorism has been very clear everywhere. So this is the first. Number two, as you mentioned, the illegal immigration. I think Egypt over the last years has been a very major player in this dossier, in this file, in this issue. I think that Egypt has not recorded one single incident of illegal immigration through Egyptian ports or soils, but and even it prevented this from happening in Libya, for instance. So we have been working on this very adamantly, and not only through just stopping this phenomena from happening, but through development, sustainable development, creating jobs for young people so that they stay in their own country rather than try their luck elsewhere. We are calling for sustainable development projects all over the continent for the same aim. I mean, just to keep the young people from leaving their countries and going with all the risks they can have by simply risking their lives to make it on the other side of the Mediterranean. So by this, they have not only offered jobs, etc., to the African young people, but again, they have managed to help European, particularly South European countries, from receiving illegal immigrants and going into the hassle of returning them or finding jobs to them, etc., etc. So on this, again, issue, Egypt has been playing a very, very major role in doing that.
Yes. Here, when I spoke about the armed conflicts, I spoke about African states who are in conflicts with each other or failure states who were not able to return back to their normal, strong position after chaotic situations there. And here we have to speak about different countries, starting with Libya, Sudan, Somalia, many other countries that Egypt has been part and partial of finding permanent solutions to the situation there.
100%.
How far was the role of Egypt in finding permanent solutions to countries in chaotic scene evident?
Major role, the most important. I mean, if we're talking, let us take them one by one. If we're talking West, then again, Egypt was the major player in establishing, I mean, in having Libya reach the stage it is in now, hopefully continuing until everything is said and done with Libya. So this is one thing Egypt has played the most important role. If we're going south, then the conflict between Sudan, north and south, I think Egypt was the most important country that played a role into, first of all, in South Sudan, getting all the factions to agree on a formula and establishing peace and security within South Sudan itself, with all its different religions and ethnicities and what have you, and then again between South and North of Sudan. The understanding that was reached was made and organized by Egypt, 100%. If we're talking African Horn, again, Egypt has played a big role as far as Somalia is concerned, and is still pushing towards keeping peace and stability in this area. So anywhere where there is a conflict, there is a war, there is armed atrocities, you find Egypt there trying to have the different opponents around a table, put their heads together to reach a settlement that is just for everybody and that secures the peace and security. As a matter of fact, I recall what our president repeatedly says: there is no peace without development, and there is no development without peace. So Egypt, again, is trying to establish projects and help countries establish projects in order to develop. And we have a conviction that once the development starts, it has to start in an environment where peace and security prevail. And This is exactly what Egypt is doing, and probably with presiding the Peace and Security Council, will even do a bigger job.
Indeed. And part of that role Egypt has been playing is fighting extremism and terrorism from all aspects. And I mean here from all aspects, security-wise, militarily-wise, ideological-wise, economic-wise. So when we speak about fighting terrorism and extremism ideologies, how far has Egypt been a key player in fighting terrorism, not only in Egypt, inside Egypt, because of what we have witnessed so far, but also in many areas in the continent at large? We've been seeing a number of terrorist organizations filling the continent. We're speaking about Al-Shabaab, we're speaking about Boko Haram, we're speaking about the Maghreb of Al-Qaeda, Daesh. All these terrorist organizations are or have presence in the continent. How far has Egypt been working on eradicating terrorism as much as possible?
I start with Egypt. I mean, you said terrorism. Terrorism is the last step. But as you said, it starts with fanatism, extremism, and then terrorism, unfortunately. So it's not only to fight, of course, we have to fight them, and if we even go to war against them, we do. But again, there are a lot of other ways to prevent things from happening, like education. And I think that this issue has been given a very big importance in Egypt as far as education is concerned. I'm not talking religious education, but I'm talking education in general. Health, the lifting of the standard and the quality of life for Egyptians. If we're talking decent life, for instance, I'm sure that one of the ultimate goals of such this huge development program is to eliminate any kind of fanatism or extremism. So all the efforts are directed into preventing this phenomena from happening rather than fighting it when it happens. So unfortunately, when it is here, we have to fight. But again, if we can prevent it, and I think Egypt has acquired enough experience to be offered to any country who needs it. You mentioned Al-Shabaab in the Horn. You mentioned the Boko Haram in Nigeria and around it. So you are talking fanatic groups and terrorism particularly finds a very fertile soil in areas where education is zero, where health is very bad, and where ignorance is prevailing. So these are the areas where such phenomena flourish. And again, by offering our help, as far as Egypt is concerned, I'm talking, in educating these people and taking care of their health, their economy as much as we possibly can. This will definitely prevent this phenomena from growing and will eradicate it on the long run. So Egypt has been doing that. Egypt has always been there. I mean, you mentioned COVID. Egypt has played an important role in securing vaccines and to poor African states who have not been lucky enough to receive enough vaccines for their people. And so we are just to improve their health conditions, which again will give them an edge over terrorism and fanatism. So Egypt is not sparing any effort to better the life of all Africans.
Right. When we speak about peace and security, you have to speak about food and water security, because that is part of the secured lives of people. Hence, we have to speak about Egypt's role in managing or in trying to find solutions to the repercussions of the climate change file. Egypt has been working on that file since a long time ago, and it was so much evident, particularly during the last COP26, in which President Sisi presented Egypt's vision towards the climate change issue, representing Africa, of course, and the Middle East. He spoke about the repercussions of the climate change and how will that reflect on the lives of people in the African continent and the Arab world at large. Tell me, or please illustrate on Egypt's role and how the vision of Egypt is trying to extend to the or to extend its vision to the African continent and the Arab world.
I tell you, this is not only a vision. A vision is okay, of course. To have a vision is something very important, but we are implementing this vision, and this is the most important thing. I mean, we can dream, but if we try to make our dream come true, then this is something that is very meaningful. So Egypt has put plans for green economy, for green development, etc., etc. But it's not only putting a plan; we are actually implementing. If you look at the new energies that we are developing, solar, wind, etc., clean energies, that is very much on the right track. We are talking about vital agriculture, etc. We are trying to reduce the emissions, hopefully to reach zero carbon within a few years. So, I mean, these are all ideas. This is all within the vision of Egypt 2030 and beyond. And we are doing it physically. And this is what our president said in the COP meeting lately. He gave the example to the world. Now we are talking changing the airplane fuels. to reduce their emissions. Hopefully,
yes.
Within a few years, there will be zero emissions, carbon emissions, and carbon emissions from even airplanes. So we are implementing our vision. We are making it real. And this is what we are trying to work with our African continent. Africa is very much a
yes.
part of the world, and it has to follow suit so that we can keep our planet safe.
Yes.
Because we are not talking our
yes.
generation, we are talking generations to come.
Right, Dr. Raouf Ghafar, political answer, thank you so much for being with us. I guess that many of the challenges are lying ahead during this month. Egypt will carry on with its responsibilities as usual. Before we end this episode, let's take this quick report. And Egypt assumes the presidency of the African Union Peace and Security Council. Let's watch.
Egypt has assumed the monthly presidency of the African Peace and Security Council as of November the 1st, said the country's ambassador to Ethiopia and its permanent representative to the African Union. Mohamed Gad added that this is the second time that Egypt assumes the presidency of the Council, which was responsible for implementing AU decisions and is somewhat similar to the UN Security Council. Its 15 member states are elected by the AU Assembly to reflect regional balances and other criteria, including the ability and political will to contribute militarily and financially to the Union. Gad said the Egyptian presidency of the Council aims to enhance its role in high-priority peace and security issues in Africa. He added that the Egyptian presidency comes at a time of increasing security challenges facing the continent, foremost of which are terrorism, extremism, organized crime, ethnic tensions, internal political crises, climate change, as well as natural disasters. He said the Egyptian presidency will hold a ministerial session on combating terrorism by dismantling extremist discourse and ideologies. The session will witness the exchange of experiences and best practices between countries, especially in light of the growing terrorist threat in the Horn of Africa and Central Africa. Gad added there will also be a session on protecting medical facilities and staff during armed conflict, and a session to study the consequences of climate change on peace and security in Africa. This is in the context of preparing for Egypt's expected hosting of the UN Conference on Climate Change in 2022. Egyptian diplomacy in Africa multilateral forums pay special attention to addressing the root causes of conflicts, preventing their recurrence via peace-building and stabilization activities, ensuring full respect for international humanitarian law, and improving humanitarian access. Developments in Sudan and Somalia will be monitored by the Council in order to formulate an appropriate response to them, adding that they are sister countries of particular importance to Egypt and its national security. Also, they have wide repercussions in terms of regional and continental security and stability. Gad said the Council, under its Egyptian presidency, intends to conduct a field visit to Somalia in order to review developments on the ground and provide necessary support in confronting the terrorist group Al-Shabaab. He said that he is expected to hold consultations with the AU Commission, the UNSC Presidency, and the UN Peacebuilding Commission.